Morning team, welcome to lesson I, chemical and physical barriers. So hopefully by now you should be pretty used to this setup. We've got our quick quiz to start you off and give yourselves about 6 minutes or so to answer as many of those as you can. As always, please do be strict with yourself, give yourself a proper 6 minutes and really do give it your best shot. The answers to this one will come up after the key words. So pause it when you're ready and we will move on. Right, chemical physical barriers is obviously the title, and here are your learning objectives. Give yourself time to go through them and then unpause it when you're ready. Right, keywords. There's a lot this time, and definitely some new ones here for you. Please do take your time to go through these. Things like hydrochloric acid and physical barrier we have already covered. Again, mucus we've covered in previous lessons, ciliated cells we've covered in previous lessons, chemical defense we've also covered. However, please do make a note of all the ones that are either unfamiliar or ones that you think you might will forget, I guess is the best way. Right, unpause it when you are ready to move on. So the answers to the starter: which type of the pathogen causes cholera? So what type of pathogen causes cholera? Remember, we've got bacteria, protoist, fungi and virus are the main four. It is of course a bacteria. It's Vibera or Vibrio cholerae. I don't know. How is it spread? So cholera is spread by oral transmission, which means it is ingested through the mouth and normally through dirty water. Again, sometimes through fecal matter as well. How is cholera ash dieback spread? It is spread through the air. It's an airborne fungus, so it releases spores. How can the spread of cholera be reduced or prevented? We've spent an entire lesson on this one, so avoid the water that is damaged. If it is damaged and you have to drink it, please do sterilize it first, so boiling or treating it. How can the spread of TB or tuberculosis be reduced or prevented? So tuberculosis is an airborne bacteria, and it is done by isolation and prevention of transmission. So put your hand up when you cough. Very basic, but that kind of idea. Which term is used for organisms that spread disease from one host to another? We call them vectors. Which organism carries a pathogen that causes malaria from one host to another? I think we all know this one. Well, I hope we do. It is, of course, the mosquito. The mosquito. And how does the malarial pathogen get into its host? It does it by sucking the human blood. And which barrier to infection traps pathogens in the dirt in the lungs? Now, we haven't explicitly talked about this one, but you may already know it. And if you're paying attention to your keyword starter or keywords last slide, then you'll almost certainly know it is, of course, mucus. And name a chemical defense against infection in the stomach. You should know this one. It is, of course, the hydrochloric acid. Right, moving swiftly on. Right, spreading pathogens. So a bit of a recap. We've got the three images there representing the Ebola virus. It is a very common third world country virus. It's transmitted through water and through air, and causes some nasty side effects. What I'd like you guys to do, and this is into your books please, because this has now been about 3 weeks since we've studied this particular lesson, in 6 full sentence bullet points, so 6 bullet point answer. Describe and explain. So remember, explain, you should be using the word because or therefore. The differences between prevention taken by local people and by doctors visiting. So the doctors visiting will obviously have different prevention techniques that they'll be carrying out than people just living their lives in the area. So answer that as best you can. Pause it when you are ready to start your answer and unpause it when you're ready to go through the answers. So these are my bullet points. You may have different ones or there may be variations of it, but it's worth going through and making notes. So local people, it'd be the most important one would be use of good hygiene. This would control the spread of Ebola. It's currently what we're doing with coronavirus, is just maintaining good hygiene. Things like, for them, it would be boiling water to kill anything waterborne. Washing hands, cleaning surfaces would all be very good for this. Doctors, on the other hand, would have to use extreme hygiene. Reason being, as you can see there on the next bullet point, doctors will come into contact with many, many people, and they will come into very close proximity with many, many people. And they will almost certainly be people that are infected, and so they're much more likely to pass the pathogen on. Then what they might do to patients is use quarantining, so isolation, and using full body suits, so hazmat suits with respirators, masks, gloves, the whole lot. And then, as you can see there, the reason being that having one disease makes a person susceptible to others. Patients have more than Ebola. So the Ebola, similar to coronavirus, SARS, MERS, swine flu, all of these airborne viruses all cause damage, which makes it's not necessarily the disease that itself that is dangerous, but it's what the disease opens you up to afterwards. Right, when you finish marking your questions and adding any answers you need to add, please pause it and unpause it to move on. So we have lines of defense. We've got many different ways. I should have animated this. Oh well. So we have chemical barriers, we have physical barriers. These are all human, mammal, animal based ones. We've moved away from plants, we've discussed plants, we're now onto humans. I've used red arrows and blue arrows. What do the colours represent? One's going to be physical, one's going to be chemical, but which one's which? Try and work it out, please. And please do make a note of all of these. The important one to point out is that the enzyme lysozyme, thank you, you said it right, appears in several places throughout our body and tends to be in places where there is a high chance of an infection entering the body. So your tear ducts and any pores in your skin all secrete this particular enzyme. We'll come on to what that is in just a bit. Right, when you're ready, unpause it, move on. So our lines of defense. We have physical barriers. These are structures that physically stop something from entering. Pathogens have difficulty getting past these barriers. It's not impossible, but it is damn harder. And then we have our chemical barriers. So these are compounds, these are reactions that are happening that attack and kill or deactivate particular pathogens. They're two different techniques, again, both used by plants, but used in different ways. Please do make a note of both these, or add to your definition from your keywords, whichever one you are working with. When you're ready, unpause it, move on. So, physical barriers. The main physical barriers we have got. I'll go through them. Either pause it as you go to make your notes, or pause it at the end of this slide to kind of summarize the slide itself. So first up, we have our skin. And now this is a very complicated definition or diagram of our skin. However, what you can see is that it is built into layers. So we have the epidermis is the very top layer of our skin. Then below the epidermis you have the dermis, and then down there you have the subcutaneous tissue. The dermis is where a lot of the skin's processes take place. It's open to infection. There are blood vessels going through there. There are glands in there. It's quite susceptible to infection, which is why above it you have the epidermis. This is a tough layer of skin which only opens to allow hairs to grow out or to allow glands to secrete. And for that reason, it secretes, we'll come on to the secretion in a bit. The epidermis is incredibly thick, doesn't look it, but trust me, it is compared to the size of a pathogen, and it is very difficult to cross, unless of course there is a break in it, such as a cut. We also have mucus. So mucus is a sticky, gloopy material. You'll know it most likely as kind of snot. Snot isn't mucus, it is old, manky mucus. The stuff that's mucus is normally clear. It attaches itself to ciliated cells most of the time, or hair cells, and it traps pathogens. So they get stuck to it and can't move on. Because the mucus isn't technically part of our body, it's not a cell, it can't itself get infected, and so it can just pass the infection or pass the pathogens straight out of the body, or deliver them down to the stomach. And then finally we have our cilia or ciliated cells. These occur in lots and lots of different places in our body. However, defensively, they tend to appear in and around our lungs. They have the hairs or the cilia on top of the cell, hence why they're called ciliated cells. And these move in a bit of a Mexican wave, and they pass along mucus and pass along dust and dirt and pathogens in one direction. And so they'll bring it up from the lungs and out in the form of a cough. And so they help, anything that does get into the body, they help push it straight back out again. So these are our 3 physical barriers. Please do make notes of these, and we'll move on to our chemical ones in just a minute. Unpause it when you're ready to move on. So our chemical barriers, same as before, write as we go, pause as we go, or pause at the end, whatever suits you. So we'll start off with stomach acid. Stomach acid is incredibly strong acid. It's produced by the stomach itself, and it's obviously designed to not just break down food, but also kill any pathogens that stumble down that way. It brings the pH down to around 1 to 2, so strong enough to burn through metal if you let it, which is why it's not a good idea to eat metal. Well, not the only reason. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't eat metal. Please don't eat metal. And it will kill pretty much anything that's down there. Your body will produce mucus. It will have a very rapidly reproducing stomach lining to protect yourself against it. In addition to that, we also have lysozymes. So these are our enzymes. This is a lovely structured picture of one. They secrete from different glands, so they can secrete through your tears, your saliva, and your mucus. These enzymes are unlike other enzymes that we've studied in the past. They are not digestive enzymes, so they do not digest food, but they do still break things down. In this case, they break down the cell walls or cell membranes of particular bacteria, which is why you can have a lot of bacteria kind of on your skin, but not necessarily be infected by it, partly because of the lysozyme, and partly because of the skin's natural barrier. Right, pause it when you are ready, and unpause it when you are done. Right, can you please, well, you can see what to do. Go for it into your books as much as you can. Unpause it after about a minute or so, 2 minutes, and when you're ready, move on. So I'd normally do this one with kind of whiteboards in the class. I guess for you it's, I don't know, say it out loud to the computer, be a weirdo. Yeah, let's go with that. I'd like you to say this out loud. So, number 1, what is the physical barrier? Yes, you are correct. It is, of course, skin. Number 2, what is the physical barrier? Yes, well done. It is the cilia in the nasolarynx, your nose, basically. Number 3, what's the physical barrier? Yes, very good. It is the mucous lining of the trachea. Number 4, what's the chemical barrier this time? Ah, yes, very good. It is, of course, the stomach. And number 5, sorry, didn't hear you. A bit louder. Yes, of course, it is. It is the lysozyme in the tear ducts. And finally, one that we didn't cover, but you may know it. Ooh, very good, well done. It is, of course, the rapid change in pH going from the stomach to the small intestine. Going from acid to alkali will cause bacteria to go into shock. Well done. Right, last little bit. No, it's not. That's a complete lie. I apologize. So this is going to be our summary statement. So it summarizes everything from the previous slide. So you might want to reverse the video to go back, or if you're using the PowerPoint, just go back a slide to help you. We've got the chemical hydrochloric acid, the physical mucus, the chemical lysozymes, and the physical cilias. For each one, I'd like to say where is it found in the body and how does it protect the body. So for each one, into your books, please make your answers known. I hope, on the next slide is the answers. If not, you'll have to see me very dodgily try and write them on here. Pause it and unpause it when you're ready. Oh, thank goodness for that. I did type it. So, the hydrochloric acid is of course found in the stomach, mucus in any openings, mouth, nose, trachea, lungs, lysozymes, again anywhere where liquid is secreted, and the cilia is the nose tubes and tubes of breathing, so the trachea, nose, nostrils, whatever you want to call it. And the protection, we know that hydrochloric acid kills pathogens using acid, mucus traps it, the cilia from the bottom down there transport it once it's trapped, and the lysozymes are enzymes that break down cell walls and cell membranes. Very good. Pause, unpause when you're ready. Okay, right, last little bit, moving on to STIs. We're not really going to focus too much on the STI themselves, but we're going to be looking at more about how they can be kind of controlled and how they can be prevented from spreading, because they are incredibly infectious and dangerous pathogens. So what is an STI? The STI is a sexually transmitted infection. It is a disease spread through any sexual activity. It can also be transferred through blood, well, actually blood transmission, but we kind of come on to that in the next question. So transmission-wise, any contact through sexual fluids, that is semen or vaginal fluids. However, they can also be transmitted through blood contact, so sharing of needles. For drug addicts, sharing needles is a very good way to spread infections, particularly if they're not cleaned properly. And for pregnant women, they can actually be, some STIs can be passed on through the placental barrier. So it's just it's one of those kind of extra bits of information, that last paragraph there, that's worth knowing. Please do make a note of both of these, as we will be talking about particularly the second half. How can you reduce transmission, or how can you limit transmission? So pause it, unpause it when you're ready, move on. So screening, remember from the very start, is a way of testing for STIs, and it's normally done through a urine test or a swab test, so it doesn't require giving blood or anything like that. Your question is, how would you reduce the spread of an STI using screening? Draw a flow diagram to explain your answer. This is a tough question. Not going to lie, I would recommend doing this on a scrap bit of paper first, and then looking at the answer afterwards and interpreting that into your own language, I guess. Yes. Right, so pause it, unpause it when you're ready. Okay, so let's see what the answer is. Remember, if you've done it on scrap paper, please do get the answer corrected and put into your books, and if you did it straight into your book, please do correct it. So, you identify infected people using a screening test. Once you've got those people, you treat them for the disease. Once they've been treated, you need to make sure, while they are infected, they need to know not to have unprotected sex. If they are still infected, this means that they do not spread the STI. This means that any partners they've had can be called in for screening, and then the process can repeat. So while you don't necessarily stop the spread, you do limit the spread, and you try and control the spread of the infection. Right, your final check. Please pick 2 of the 4 questions. So we've got one about lysozymes, we have one about cilia, we have one about the stomach, and we also have one explaining physical and chemical barriers. So when you are ready, please unpause it and check your answers to these questions, and then we'll finish on our worksheet. So we have our answers there. Please do make your corrections if you need to, and then when you are ready, move on to the worksheet that's linked to today's lesson. Give that a shot. It's obviously got the answers that go with it, and other than that, very well done today. Good work. Keep it up. See you later.